Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar. Today we are going to be looking at how we can improve employability skills provision and delivery by, number one, accurately assessing students' employability skills. Number two, acting on these results and interpreting the information that it provides. And number three, measuring the distance travelled and evidencing impact of learning. First off, I'd like to start with a quick poll, which I will start now. And the question being, do you, as deliverers, have difficulty assessing and accurately measuring your learners' employability skills and the distance travelled and impact of learning of your employability provision? So if I start that now. It's a simple question, so yes or no answer, and we'll have a look at the results. Just let the last couple of people cast their vote. Well, thank you very much. So what the result we've got in so far, so almost everyone's replied, and we've got 100% has said yes, they do have difficulty with those things. That's a good start, so we're in the right place at least. Okay, I'd quickly like to introduce myself. So my name is Stephen King. I'm the commercial manager here at Reed NCFE. For those of you who don't know Reed NCFE, I haven't worked with us in the past before, we are a joint venture company. So we're 50% owned by global recruitment agency Reed and 50% owned by the awarding organisation NCFE. So it puts us in quite a unique position with regards to, one, the experience and expertise of our respective parent companies, and two, our own experience and expertise. We solely focus on employability skills. We don't venture into any curriculum areas. It's pure and simple employability skills. So that is definitely our specialism. And what we're going to do today is have a look at the latest of the tools that we've developed, which one is we released in September. So this is a tool called BESTest. So I'll have a look at BESTest and what it is, what it does, and most importantly, what you get and your learners get out of it. We'll have a look at the results to date. So what are the national employability skills trends so far? We'll have a look at what this means, what do we do with this information, and how do we act on the results? Basically, how do we use BESTest to make sure that your students leave you more ready for the workplace than when they joined you? So before I go on to do that, I guess the best thing to do is to look at, okay, what is the issue we're actually trying to fix here? There's no point developing a new tool or a new resource there's no need for. So what are we trying to fix? Well, a lot of the centres that we work with, they have had real issues when it comes to properly assessing their learners' employability skills, and then conversely, off the back of that, properly measuring distance travelled and evidencing the impact and evidencing the work that they've been doing with the learners. And it's for two primary reasons, really. The one, it's a very subjective subject matter, isn't it? Employability skills, and it's hard to get a definitive definition of what makes somebody ready for the workplace or what makes somebody more employable than somebody else. I imagine that everybody on this webinar will have a view of what employability skills means. And I imagine every single person it's a slightly different view. So this makes it hard to measure and assess it in a consistent way. For example, if you have one tutor who assesses the learners at the start of the course, comes out with this is where their strengths and weaknesses are, this is what they need to do, and you have another tutor assess at the end of the course, it's such a subjective matter that you can't possibly be confident in the results unless you spent a lot of time, effort and money making sure that they're assessing the same thing and to the same standard. How do you know what the impact of the work you've done is? And the second reason, even if you can measure this and evidence this, it's very difficult to evidence it. If you use self-assessment tools, for example, it may be that actually a learner grades themselves lower at the end of the course and at the start of the course. They may look at a situation and say, okay, when I came into college or into my course, they may think, yeah, I'm pretty ready for the workplace, without a full understanding of what that means. over the course of your course, they may develop a better understanding of what that actually means and then grade themselves further from the workplace than when they started, which isn't good, obviously. And equally, I'm sure all of you have so many good news stories and so many case studies that you could fill a room. But that's very hard to evidence. And when, say, Ofsted come around and want to look at that, it's very hard to quantify and evidence and demonstrate to them. So we wanted to develop a tool that helped with that and helped give you quantifiable and measurable data to show how you're improving your learners' employability skills. So what did we develop? Well, it's BESTest. So BESTest stands for Baseline Employability Skills Test. It is a diagnostic tool specifically for employability skills, as you've probably guessed. So it has two primary functions, really. So number one is to identify your learners' strengths and weaknesses when it comes to employability skills. And number two is to accurately measure distance travelled. Now, as I mentioned, we wanted to add a level of science and data and rigor to the process. So we developed a psychometric test. Now, for those of you who are familiar with psychometric assessment, you'll know what valid and reliable means. But I will just quickly give a very quick definition for those who may not be familiar with psychometric testing. So validity means it measures what it says it measures. It isn't influenced by other factors, which is really important. And reliability means that it is or measures the same thing regardless of when you take the assessment. So, for example, if you took the assessment on a Monday morning, you may feel differently about the world than when you took the test on the Friday afternoon before. Just because you've taken it at a different time and you feel differently, you won't get a different score, which is really important when we come to looking at measuring distance travelled. But I'll come back to that at a later point. Now, before I explain what it is, I'll just quickly do a couple of things to say what it isn't. It is not a personality profiling test. So it will not give you a result sheet that says your learner is introvert or extrovert. Now, we don't want it to do that. There are loads of tools out there on the market that do that. So if you want to do that, I suggest that this test isn't for you. Neither is it a career suitability test. So it won't come out and say you should be a bricklayer, or you should be a dentist, or you should be a primary school teacher off the back of this test. Again, there are lots of tests out there that do this, and this isn't one of them. So what is it? Well, it is solely focused on employability skills. So I think that looking at the result sheet that you can see on your screen now, so this is an individual student's result sheet. This gives you a good idea of what it tells you about your learners. So as you can see, on the right-hand side, we have an overall score of 54%. So this learner, this individual student, John Smith, on his Business Admin Level 2 course, has scored 54% as his own employability skills score. Now, the really interesting, the really helpful information is actually in the slider bars that you can see. So those bars that are blue and red. So on the left-hand side, you can see 4 slider bars. So we've got CV, job search, interview techniques, and workplace behaviours. So there are 4 hard skills. In this instance, you can see, so John Smith, so clearly he's having a bit of difficulty with his interview techniques. So if I was working with this student, I know where I'd start, and I know what type of provision I would put in place and what would help him the most. What's going to help him the most to get him into the world of work and help him with his employability skills? Well, work on his interview techniques clearly will help. Now, if we look on the right-hand side, so we have the red slider bars, so we've got 6 of those. So we've got motivation, professionalism, resilience, organisation, sociability, and initiative. Now, these are 6 soft skills, and they are the skills that time and again employers say this is what we want from our potential employees and from our candidates. So these 6 soft skills are really, really key. So again, if we took this learner as an example, I would definitely be thinking about, okay, how can I improve this student's resilience? How can I improve this student's sociability score to give them the best chance of getting into and keeping work? So this test, so BESTest, the learner would take the assessment at the start of the course. and be greeted with a scorecard just like this. Then they would carry out some learning, carry out the course, end of the course, take the assessment again, and it is the exact same assessment, which is key. Again, we'll go back to that psychometric reliability, and they will be greeted with the exact same scorecard. So you've got the start point, you've got an end point with hopefully all the little icons further to the right and higher scoring, and therefore you've got your distance travelled and your impact evidence of the impact of learning. So you've said, okay, I need to work on John Smith's interview technique and his workplace behaviours. So we did some work around interview techniques and how to behave in the workplace, and hey presto, he's got a better score in each of those metrics and is more prepared and more ready to embark upon a career. Okay. So as well, what I'll do now is quickly go through the kind of the aggregated scores that you can get with BESTest as well. So as well as learner by learner or student by student, you also can get an example here of an engineering level 2 course. So you can start looking at groups of learners. So rather than looking at just individuals, you can start looking at groups. So again here we've got an engineering level 2, so we've got an overall course score of 70%, so that's an average score across the entire cohort. And clearly we can see here with this graph, we've got an issue around interview techniques. So whereby their workplace behaviours are pretty good. So if you go into the workplace, they'll do well, which is great if you are thinking along the context of work experience. But look at their interview techniques. That's the third from the right there in the blue skills. They're so poor that the chances are they won't actually get to display these workplace behaviours because they won't get through the interview process. So you can see as a group, I want to work with this group on their interview techniques. And again, if we look at their red skills, the soft skills, you've got the resilience and initiative. Now clearly there's a correlation and a relationship between these soft skills and the hard skills. So the soft skills are what drive the hard skills. So I'll come on to that in a little bit more detail when we look at the results of the assessments to date. But just keep in mind that those red soft skills do influence the hard skills that you see on the left-hand side. So what else do you get? So as well as the aggregated reports by course, you can get them by curriculum, campus, region, and across the whole provider. So you can start looking at different areas, comparing different curriculum areas, looking at, okay, well, where is the employability provision working well? Where isn't it working well? What can we take from different areas to improve employability provision in other areas? So you start building up a picture of what's going on across your cohorts and your groups and your curriculum areas across the whole provider. So how do we assess this? So it's, as I said, a psychometric test, and it's assessed through 30 situational workplace or employability skills questions. Now those 30 questions fall into one of 4 scenarios. So it's always a scenario about CVs, or a scenario about interview techniques, or a scenario about job search, or a scenario about workplace behaviours. So you can really easily see which of the hard skills is being assessed within the question. What's then assessed implicitly is all those soft skills. So there's no one question on, say, motivation. That motivation that score is garnered through how they respond to the questions on CVs, on job search, on interview techniques, and so forth. So it's a web-based assessment, so it can be taken online, it can be taken on a computer, tablet, phone, whichever device your students want to use, and it can be accessed directly through your portal. So that's a VLE or Moodle or whatever you have. It can be accessed directly through that, and there's no username, no password, so the login process is really simple. If you don't have a VLE or a Moodle, we can provide you with a URL that you can send out to your students and your learners. I think it's worth having a quick look at the assessment. So this link here could be a link on your VLE or Moodle. So the learner would click on that, and it would take them straight to the assessment. As you can see, no need for no username, no password, and they're straight in. What we do, get the learner to enter in their name, answer truthfully, obviously, how old they are. If you believe that, you'll believe anything. And then enter in their email address, if I could type, and then select which curriculum area does your course belong to? Select the curriculum area they're in, art and design. What course are you currently studying? Fashion and clothing. And what level? There we go, straight into the assessment. So as I said before, all of the questions are linked to or around one of those 4 hard skills. So this first one is clearly around CVs. It's in, as you can see, it's in the question. So of the list of below, who have you given your CV to for them to read through and give you feedback? Parent, friend, careers advisor. Perfect. So you have this one probably is around job search. So you're calling employers about potential vacancy, but one employer has not replied after 3 attempts at phoning. You really want to work at this company, what do you do? And in that first example you saw, you could select multiple answers. Some of them you select just one answer. Now I'm not going to go through the full assessment because that will take 10 to 15 minutes. But what I can do is if it's something you want to discuss in a bit more detail, we can go through this at a bit more leisure, or I could set you up with an account so you can have a look at yourselves. So I'll close that down for the time being. Okie doke. So another quick poll for you, if I may. So this is a poll related to those results that we've got. So as I said, we've had around about 20,000 students have taken this since we launched it in September. And I would like you to think of your learners, think of the people and the pupils and the students that you work with on a day-to-day basis. Do you think your learners would score highest with a soft skill or a hard skill? So I'll launch that poll now and give you a couple of seconds to answer. Okay, another 2 or 3 seconds. Okie doke. I'm not sure what's happened there, apparently. So we've got 67% have said hard skill, but 50% have said soft skill. It must have been, something's gone wrong with the maths there. So we're looking at, more people are saying hard skill than soft skill. Okay, so what have we actually seen so far? Well, these are the top 10, so out of 10 rankings. So with 1 being the highest and 10 being the lowest, obviously. So as we can see, we have professionalism, sociability and motivation, the top 3 soft skills, or the soft skill strengths, if you like, with interview skills and workplace behaviours being the hard skill strengths. Now I mentioned when we looked at that scorecard at the start, I mentioned that there is a strong correlation between the soft skills and the hard skills. Well, this is the prime example here. So if you are a professional in your approach to work, you are motivated to do a good job, and you display good interpersonal skills, the chances are you're going to perform well at interview and you're going to come across well in the workplace. So this is got to be good news, right? So we know, context of the 2 big hitters at the moment in FE, we have work experience and apprenticeships. So clearly, if you can get your students in front of an employer, they're going to do well. They're going to represent you well. They're going to perform well at interview. They're going to impress the employer. They're going to succeed in their application or their role or their work experience placement, which has got to be a good thing. But then, if we look at the weaknesses that are identified in this, so from 6 downwards, so the 3 soft skills that we've got identified as weaknesses, we've got organisation, resilience and initiative, and job search and CV as the hard skills that are classed as weaknesses. And so if you look at this and you kind of unpick this a little bit, you can see there's an equally strong correlation at work here as well. If you are disorganised in your approach to looking for work, you may apply to the same organisation a number of times, you may forget which roles you've applied for, and so forth. And equally, if you don't deal well with the inevitable setbacks that come your way in your job search, and don't respond well to the kind of the rejections that you get, clearly your job search skills are not going to be as strong as somebody who is the opposite and who does deal well with these things. So herein lies a clear issue. In the real world, when your students have left the safety of your care and embark upon a life in the world of work, the first steps that they're going to need to take in order to get work are: one, they're going to need to find a job opportunity, and two, they're going to need to apply for it. Now, whether that's using a CV or an application form or something along those lines, they're still going to need to apply for it to get in front of that employer. So with these being the two greatest areas of weakness, and without these skills, they're never going to get to show off their strengths and what they're good at, so that namely being good at interview and behaving well in the workplace. And so what a waste! What a waste that all this good that they have is being missed because they can't get through past that first hurdle. So moving on to acting on the results. So I imagine when you are greeted with your initial assessment scores, there may be three things, that you may ask yourself. So number one, how ready for the workplace are my students and the people I'm working with? Number two, what are their weaknesses and their strengths? And three, what do I actually do with these results? How do I improve the scores that they've got, and how do I make sure that they're actually getting something out of the time they're spending with me? So clearly, this last point, that's basically the point of the tool, isn't it? To evidence the good work that you're doing and evidence how much you are improving their prospects of finding work. So clearly, there's a context here. There's a context at work here, and there's a context to the BESTest assessment. So if we think back to those 10 skills that were assessed, they will mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And if we use a couple of examples just to kind of to highlight the point, really, the first one we'll think of is resilience. So resilience means something different to different people. Now, whether that's across different curriculum areas or across different areas of society. But if we think of it in curriculum areas, you have two prime examples. We've got health and social care. What does resilience mean in the health and social care context? So it probably means being able to deal with many and varied unpleasant situations that you're going to find yourself in. It could be talking to families regarding terminal illnesses or the loss of a loved one. It could be coming in on a Monday morning and finding that a patient that you've developed a strong bond with is no longer there. So you still have to pick yourself up on that Monday morning and deliver and provide the same supportive and positive care to your other patients, even though you may not feel like doing so. But then if you think about, conversely, if you think about in construction, resilience probably means actually being able to get up on a Monday morning, it's throwing it down with rain outside, it's freezing cold, getting up, motivating yourself to get out of bed and go and work outside all day. Excuse me, sorry. It could equally mean physical resilience. So actually dealing with hard manual labour, hard graft every day, all day, every day. So that's two examples of how what the resilience could mean to different people. Now, clearly, BESTest isn't assessing resilience in these kind of contexts, because it couldn't possibly work across so many different curriculum areas. So in the BESTest context, it's about dealing with negative feedback, criticism or failure, and being able to actually learn from that. It could be about being able to handle the inevitable setbacks and rejections that are going to come your way as part of the application process. For example, you work really hard and you manage to actually get to interview. Brilliant. You don't get the job. How do you deal with that? How do you respond, and how do you move on to the next opportunity? Thinking of a hard skill, so the CV score, that the assessment isn't assessing their physical copy of an actual CV. It's not looking at what their CV looks like or what's included in it. It's actually looking at, okay, what is a CV and how should you use it? How do you get that CV in front of people? How do you make sure that CV then gets you to the next stage of the application process? I think that question, the first question we looked at on the assessment, looked at CVs, and it was the question was asking, if you were to give your CV to someone, who would that be? Who would you give it to them before you hand it on to an employer? So that's not assessing their actual physical copy of the CV, is it? It's assessing how they prepare themselves before they send that CV out. Now, luckily, as you may guess, we've provided all of that context and done this work for you. So as well as the BESTest assessment, you can also, as an additional product, buy some e-learning resources which are mapped specifically to the BESTest assessment. So there's 10 modules, one for each of the hard skills, and each of those modules takes 10 minutes. Now the idea, it's quite short and sharp. Now the idea isn't that this is the entirety of your employability skills provision. The idea that this is a sort of a basin, okay, a starting point of what you do with and how you deal with the results that BESTest has provided you with. So if it identifies 3 or 4 weaknesses and areas to improve on, here's 3 or 4 resources that will help improve that learner's score in that area. So we'll have a quick look at these resources. Now they're currently sat on our website, so you can have a look at some of them. And here we've got 4 here. So we've got the 4 hard skills. So we've got interview, workplace behaviours, job search, and CVs. So I'll have a quick look at job search. So they're all game based. So you'll see this one is actually based on snakes and ladders. So nice, simple activities and resources that your learners will actually quite enjoy doing, and we've had good feedback on this so far. So question 1, Natalie sees a job advertised on a recruitment website. Is this a hidden or open job opportunity? Now all the questions not every single question is mapped exactly to a question that is asked on the BESTest assessment. They're built into the question as well. So again, another question around searching for jobs. What I can do as well, so rather than spending lots of time now looking through all of these resources, I'll send you this link to this web page so you can have a look and have a browse with those resources as well and see what you think. Excellent. Okay, well, a couple of questions have come in at this start. I apologise, I should have said ask questions as we go along, but a couple of questions have come in as we've gone anyway, so thank you very much for that. And I'll go through them. There's a few more than I'll answer, but if I don't answer your question now, I will answer it by email afterwards. So the number one top question here, so how much does BESTest cost? Well, the cost of BESTest is £2 per learner, inclusive of VAT. The learning resources are able to be purchased on an annual licence. So that's £500, including VAT, for an unlimited licence across a full year. So that's unlimited in terms of the numbers of the learners. Question 2, I think I answered that one as we were going. It was how many learners have sat the assessment so far? Well, we've had nearly 20,000 learners or students have gone through and taken the assessment so far. The test itself was launched in September, so we're quite happy with the 20,000 so far. So it's putting us at a point where we can actually start drawing some conclusions from the results. Okay, look, I've got one more here. Can you define resilience, please? I can. Probably the best thing to do is I'll send a bit of a definition, a bit of text about some of the metrics, so you can have a look through those and see kind of what BESTest is assessing in its context that the assessment is set. Okie doke. Well, what I'll do now, I'll put my contact details up on the screen for a couple of minutes while we finish off. If there's any more questions, please do send them in, and I'll answer them by email after the webinar. Just to say at the end, really, as you can imagine, this has been a really popular new tool. To be honest, we've been really pleased with how it's been responded to, and the response we've had from providers and students alike has been really, really positive, and we're really pleased with how it's going. If you'd like to have a more of an in-depth discussion about the tool itself, about how other providers are using it, I'm sure we could talk about different colleges using it in a context you may, in the same way that you may want to use it, or a private training provider, how they're using it, or even adult and community learning centres, how they're maybe using it. So please, if you'd like to do that, just give me a call. You've got the number on the screen there, or send me an email, and I'll happily have a more detailed conversation with you. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's really appreciate that you would come and join me today for this half an hour, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the near future. Take care and have a good day. Bye bye.